For today's Business Matters, we're joined by Don Ma. Don, always good to see you. What's happening in the world of business today, sir?
Yeah, always great to see you guys as well. So actually, let me start off with China, some news there. A chip war between the US and China running high here. A Beijing-backed organization is targeting products from American chipmaker Intel. The Cybersecurity Association of China said today that Intel products sold in China should be subject to a security review. Last year, China's cyber watchdog barred domestic operators of key infrastructure from buying products made by US chipmaker Micron, saying that the company's products failed China's network security review. And the allegations come at a time when the US is restricting China's access to crucial chip-making equipment and components as part of Washington's efforts to halt the modernization of China's military. And a major error for the largest listed company in the Netherlands, ASML, has confirmed it accidentally shared its third quarter earnings early due to a technical error. Now, the report revealed that the chip maker missed order estimates and cut next year's sales and bookings as well, booking forecasts. So in response, shares nosedived the most in 26 years. This triggered a downturn across the broader chip-related market. A group of Dutch investors said they're in dismay by the early release, but are sympathetic to human error. Germany's biggest airline, Lufthansa, has been fined $4 million for discriminating against Jewish passengers. The U.S. Department of Transportation announced a record-breaking fine yesterday. It happened in May 2022 when 128 Orthodox Jewish passengers were denied boarding on a connecting flight in Frankfurt, Germany. They were flying from New York to Budapest. Lufthansa apologized for the incident, saying it resulted from a series of inaccurate communications and misjudgments. But the DOT said the airline treated them as a group, adding, quote, they're prepared to investigate and take action whenever passengers' civil rights are violated. And former President Trump laid out his economic vision yesterday in a Bloomberg News interview. He talked about trade and fiscal policies aimed at boosting growth. He also talked about tariffs on foreign goods and what his relationship with the Federal Reserve might look like as the next president. Now, critics are arguing that these proposals could increase consumer prices, worsen inflation, and further balloon the national debt. Earlier, I spoke to Michael Busler. He's a finance professor at Stockton University and a public policy analyst. I talked to him about this topic. So a lot to digest through here. I'll start off with this. Let me ask you, can tariffs bring back American manufacturing? That is without driving up consumer prices and harming small businesses, because they do rely on global supply.
Absolutely. So, and thanks for having me. As you know, it's my pleasure to be here. So tariffs can bring some of the manufacturing back. It may put some upward pressure on prices. But when Trump put the big tariffs on last time on steel, we saw steel production in the U.S. go up, and there was not much of an impact on inflation. Look, the reason that we're making so many goods in places like China and other parts of Asia is that their labor costs are so low that we can make products over there, bring them back over here, and sell them at a lower price. That leaves us vulnerable to some supply chain disruptions. So what President Trump says is, I'm going to put a tariff on. It'll raise the price of goods being imported into the country. Then they'll be more expensive than the goods made here in the U.S. So that will encourage companies to start making things back in the U.S., and we'll see more increased production of goods. When Trump got into office in 2016, he took a look at every one of our trade agreements, and they were all imbalanced in favor of the other side. For instance, with China, we put a 10% tariff on cars made in China and brought into here. Cars made in the U.S. and sold in China, they put a 25% tariff. For whatever reason, on Corvettes, they put a 50% tariff. So Trump said, look, let's just make this fair. If you're not going to reduce the tariffs on our goods coming in, we're going to raise the tariffs on your goods coming into our country. There may be some upward pressure on price. I don't think it'll be significant, but the benefit will bring a lot of manufacturing back to the U.S. where it should be.
But what about small businesses? They make up most of the economy. Can companies relocate without causing disruptions or pressure on their business? It's a bit more difficult for smaller businesses, right?
Yeah, but smaller businesses may benefit by this because there may be some products that they like to sell, but the products made in China are just so much cheaper. Now the products made in China are not going to be cheaper, so that'll open up the market for domestic companies. I think overall this will have a positive impact on the economy, and it'll make some of our trading partners deal more fairly. We had a problem with NAFTA. Trump renegotiated that. Now we have something that's fair. Same thing with South Korea and Japan. He came up with new trade agreements that were fairer. And he said, I'm going to put big tariffs on unless you do this. And they were able to then comply with something that benefits the American public.
So here's the other part of tariffs. The reality is that it could spark a trade war leading to maybe higher prices for consumers and maybe even job losses. Is there a risk here?
There's certainly a risk of that. I don't think will happen because while we depend on China and other Asian countries for a lot of goods, they depend on us to buy all those goods. So if we weren't buying their goods anymore, that would cause them economic hardship. And countries like China are having a very difficult time with their economy right now. They haven't really recovered from the COVID shutdown. So there is a risk. I think the rewards outweigh any of the risks.
And another aspect is that the U.S. needs allies. So, I mean, would aggressive tariff policies alienate some allies when the U.S. maybe perhaps needs support to counter China, for example?
Not if the trade agreements and the tariffs are fair. So if we're going to put a 10% tariff on their goods and they put a 10% tariff on our goods, that's fair. What happens now is that the tariffs that other countries put on and our goods are much higher than the tariffs we put on. Nobody wants to get into a trade war, the U.S. or any of our allies. And it's important that we work with our allies. So we did renegotiate deals with Japan and South Korea, as I mentioned before. And I think the threat of tariffs will bring people to the table to come up with a fair trade agreement rather than these imbalanced ones that we now have.
All right, Michael, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much again for coming.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And the world could be on the brink of a new age of electricity, but it is navigating the transition with a high level of uncertainty. The International Energy Agency said there are very different energy worlds ahead in the second half of the decade, deepening depending on elections and how geopolitical tensions resolve. In its annual World Energy Outlook report, it said that based on current government policies, fossil fuel demand is set to peak before 2030, and this means a surplus of oil and gas, which could lead to lower prices and a boost in investments into renewable energy. But reduced supplies from the Middle East conflict could disrupt oil flows and strain the energy system. Now, do you like infinite scrolling and shopping? Well, Google's new shopping service may be perfect for you. But if you're trying to break your scrolling habit, you might want to steer clear. Here's NTD Sean Marshall with more.
Google Shopping now offers infinite scroll. Similar to how apps like TikTok and Instagram use algorithms and personal data to show content tailored to your interests. It also uses personalized browsing options to look at shoppable products and videos while finding the lowest prices.
We know AI is good at targeting you, analyzing what your shopping habits are, and with the power of Google, it can definitely fine-tune and help you find that perfect gift for yourself. Or with the holidays coming up, it can help you find the perfect gifts for your loved ones.
The new Google Shopping experience uses AI to show the most relevant products to speed up and simplify your research, along with item ranking preferences.
Also, one of the good things is that it's got the option for you to virtually try on any article of clothing if you're looking for clothes.
You can choose different models that have your body type to see how the clothing might look.
AI is experimental. So basically, Google seems like they've put out this AI component in Google Shopping for us, meaning the shoppers, to be the guinea pigs to find out if it's going to work. I mean, because with AI, you can only do so much experimentation in the laboratory, but at some point, you've got to release it out to the general public.
Google has the vast gold mine of data from YouTube and internet browsing to know what you could want or need. Google has paired the 45 billion product listings in Google's shopping graph with Gemini models to transform the online shopping experience with a new personalized shopping home. It's already available, along with more rolling out in the U.S. over the coming weeks. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, has taken a major step to protect consumers. The agency announced a new click-to-cancel rule aimed at making it easier for people to cancel recurring subscriptions and memberships. The FTC says it has been receiving dozens of complaints every day about negative option marketing. It refers to programs where subscriptions automatically renew unless the consumer cancels. FTC Chair Linda Khan says, quote, "The FTC's rule will end these tricks and traps, saving Americans time and money. Nobody should be stuck paying for a service they no longer want. And this rule will go into effect in about 6 months." Amazon Kindle readers can now create worlds in full color because for the first time ever, the e-reader will be offered with a color display. This is part of the online retailer's fully refreshed e-reader lineup. The Color Soft costs about $280 and is available for pre-order now. Amazon also unveiled an updated Kindle Scribe with generative AI features and new in-book note-taking features. As for the Paperwhite model, it's being built as the fastest ever. The Japanese creator of the movie Godzilla will be taking over the U.S. distributor of Studio Ghibli's popular animation films. Tojo announced that it's going to acquire New York-based GKids. Terms of the deal were not disclosed, but GKids will become a wholly owned subsidiary of Toho. The movie is part of Toho's multi-year growth strategy, which centers on animation and expansion in overseas markets. Global popularity for Japanese entertainment has surged, and GKids distributed Ghibli's Oscar-winning The Boy and the Heroine. And returning to the moon in style, the next spacesuits likely to walk on the moon will be designed by an Italian fashion house. Take a look.
This is the new Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit. It looks like the classic white spacesuit with red trim and gray patches on the knees and elbows, but this one is designer. Italian luxury group Prada and Houston-based startup Axiom Space have teamed up for the next planned moon landing in 2026. Together, the two unveiled and showcased the spacesuit design at the International Astronautical Congress in Milan, Italy. The next generation spacesuit design is for NASA's Artemis 3 mission to the moon. The scheduled launch would be the first astronaut moon landing since Apollo 17 in 1972. Prada's chief marketing officer Lorenzo Bertelli expressed pride in the result. He said this is just the first step in a long-term collaboration with Axiom Space. The spacesuit was engineered to deal with challenging lunar conditions and has undergone extensive testing. It is made to withstand extreme temperatures found on the lunar South Pole. It can endure the coldest temperatures found on the parts of the moon that are permanently covered by shadow, and it was tested underwater to simulate the moon's environment. On top of that, the suit will allow astronauts to perform spacewalks for at least 8 hours. Axiom Space President Matt Ondler said the design was elevated by combining the skills from both companies. He said innovation really comes when we put diverse teams together, diverse backgrounds, diverse educations, and different skills. Axiom Space also said that the spacesuit program shows how the commercial space industry is enabling non-traditional partnerships to enhance space exploration capabilities. The suit is now entering its final development stage and will undergo more testing before the critical design review next year.
Football legend Tom Brady is now an owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. He says he's humbled and excited to have been unanimously approved. Here's more on that.
Before I get started, I just wanted to talk about
7-time Super Bowl winner Tom Brady is now a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders.
It's great that Tom Brady wants to invest in the NFL. I think he cares deeply about this game.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says Brady brings an important perspective to management.
They add a lot to the ownership. I love not just the diversity of it, but the diversity of thought in the context of what's good for the game, what can we do better, how do we improve, how do we get bigger.
On social media, Brady wrote, "It's a blessing to know I'll be involved in the greatest league in the world for the rest of my life." At the same time, thanking Raiders owner Mark Davis for welcoming him in.
This has the potential to go bad fast.
Football analyst Doug Zarkin says leading a high-performing team is different than building a high-performing team.
Tom has only ever looked at the team from the perspective of, is the offense strong? Having to look at all sides of building a team, defense, special teams, coaching, royalties that they have to pay, league-generated sponsorships, individual sponsorships.
Zarkin says that depending on how active Brady is in ownership, he can see it not going well.
All right, on to Wall Street. Main benchmark indexes ended higher today. The Dow again closed above 43,000 points, recouping losses in the previous session. S&P 500 was just a hair away from setting another closing milestone, but closed just short of that. It was a broadly positive day for Wall Street, and it was financial stocks which led the way. Gains in the so-called Magnificent Seven group of tech stocks have driven most of Wall Street's record-breaking run this year. But however, with evaluations increasingly stretched and a brighter economic outlook, investors have been seeking opportunities elsewhere. All right, that's everything in today's Business Matters.